Hello and welcome to the MAC weather page for this Labor Day, Monday, September 4th. And we'll take a look at the preliminary outlook for this winter coming up. We'll have my official forecast November 15th. And again, right now we'll look at a couple of other items in the short term. You can see for later today a good chance of strong to severe thunderstorms, especially from around the Lansing area and off to the south and east. A marginal risk further north. So some strong thunderstorms certainly possible as a strong cold front will move through the area. Again, the areas I'm really concerned about is like Blissfield, Jasper, over towards Tupperville and St. Thomas and even London. Again, some of those areas could see some pretty powerful storms here as that strong cold front comes through some pretty unstable air as temperatures will climb into the 80s today, so a pretty warm day. And you can see the next interest is going to be towards next weekend. It's going to be a slow mover. It's going to be reaching Category 5 strength as it comes just to the north of a lot of the islands. And again, right now, the odds continue to increase across southern Florida into the Keys from those areas, and then either side of the Florida Peninsula, whether it be the Gulf side or the Atlantic side, from the Carolinas all the way around towards Louisiana, but especially, I think, east of Louisiana. Again, we're going to really want to keep an eye on this. This could be a catastrophic storm again, as it is more and more likely to make a U.S. impact at some point. There is still a chance that it could curl and safely go out to sea, but those odds keep going down with each model run as the trend has been further to the west and southwest. So we'll keep an eye on that. Again, that should begin to affect, I think, portions of the U.S. if it's going to, probably next weekend as we get towards late Saturday or Sunday. We'll have a much better idea as we get towards the middle of this upcoming week. But until then, again, this is something that certainly bears watching. Now, as we look at creating the forecast for the upcoming winter, we take a look at the ENSO events and where we're at, where we've been, and what some of the forecast models are to determine the most common, the most likely analog years that we would look back at to make up this year's forecast. And again, these are the years that we're looking at, and we'll show you exactly what that means as far as precipitation and temperatures here shortly. And when we refer to the ENSO events, most commonly you'll hear me talk about ENSO 1-2, which would be the far eastern Pacific at the equator, or the ENSO 3-4 farther out into the Pacific. And again, the effects of these are pretty important as the upper flow patterns that are more persistent as we go through any particular given season, which we're forecasting. For instance, in the wintertime, if we had a very strong El Nino in the ENSO 1-2 that promotes high pressure off to its north, and then the flow around that will take that more zonal flow from the Pacific right across much of the U.S., bottling the coldest air up into Canada before it drops into places like Nova Scotia, northeastern U.S., up towards Maine. But again, this year we expect a rather flat pattern, or a neutral pattern, and that tends to be the pattern that'll produce a lot of progressive transient type systems where we don't see any big blocking. And you can see the forecast models at the beginning of the month of August show that staying within +1 to -1, but mainly in the neutral areas, very close to normal. And so without any strong signal there, we expect, again, storms to become progressively moving across the U.S. without any big blocking taking place, at least as far as that goes. And you can see mid-August also the same. We expect to mean in a neutral area. And in the summertime, what that meant for us this year is because we didn't have any big blocking that would give us that big high off to our east and produce heat waves of 7 to 10 days, even a couple of them. You can see we ended up with 4 90-degree days here in Breckenridge so far. That was at the end of August. And you can see last year at the same time we had 13, as well as places like Jasper, 11 for Middleton, and 9 for Blissfield. Much less 90-degree days because we just didn't have that real strong, persistent south and southwest flow out from the plains coming into the Great Lakes, allowing us to heat up. So last year, as we went into the winter time, we had a favorable pattern for cold and snow as far as the ENSO event. But the problem is we had a lot of cold surface water coming off Asia towards the U.S. off the coast. And with that cold air in place, that does not promote ridging off to the north of it, which if it was a ridge instead of a low, we'd have clockwise winds, and then that would bring that cold air down from the north into much of the center part of the U.S. That didn't happen, so more often than not, we had a trough out west, and that created somewhat of a zonal flow. Now, they did create enough of a west flow coming out of the Rockies that we certainly had the opportunities for quite a bit of snowstorms. We ended up with 32 inches here in the Breckenridge area, which is 8 inches below normal. And again, some areas, though, off into the Thumb area down towards Flint, Detroit, seeing normal snowfall for a month. So it wasn't a horrible year. And again, but we expect things to be a little different here. It's gone as most of that cold water. It's being replaced by some warmer water, and that'll have a tendency to promote ridging off to the west, more flow of northern air coming down from Canada towards the center part of the country. And we'll still have some warm waters, but not nearly as warm as you see last year, how much warm water was just off the eastern seaboard. This year, much less, but that still is enough warm water, I think, to promote somewhat of a upper ridge to take place, and that'll help bring moisture up. And in between these two, the weaknesses should allow a pretty active storm track across much of the areas from the Central Plains into the either Ohio Valley, Great Lakes, or off into the Tennessee Valley. So again, I think we'll have an active storm track that should provide many storms. And again, whether or not you get that storm in the snowfall, that's yet to be seen. But the opportunity is much like you said at a poker table. You can't win if you're not playing. This year looks like we'll be at the poker table, and we'll see who gets the winning hands as far as snowfall. And if we look at the forecasted models, like we said, about 2/3 of the models are predicting that we will be in a neutral event. If anything, in the long term, a slight increase of the odds that we could go into an El Nino, but that would probably be next spring or next summer. But again, they're not very strong signals right now. Again, the dominance seems to be a neutral pattern either side of that normal. As far as the European model, what it's predicting for the month of November, colder than normal, so we may get off to a good start. And then if we look at December, much of the coldest area, a little bit further to the southeast, but still near normal temperatures would still be pretty chilly and would provide plenty of cold enough air for snow. And as we get into January, most of the models, most of the forecast outlooks are really predicting a pretty cold January across much of the U.S., the Midwest rather than the Great Lakes. And so overall, if we look at November through January on the European model, it looks like colder than normal. So it looks like a pretty good start to the winter season. And then the overall temperatures for February on the European model become a little bit warmer, but not tremendously warm, but still warmer. And that helps to take the December to February and gives us a little bit above normal, but only about 3/10 to maybe half a degree at the most. And again, that's because of the warm February that the European is printing out. Now, as far as precipitation for the months of December, January, and February on the European, it shows much of the northern 2/3 or so of the U.S. being above normal precipitation. Again, another good sign that we could see some active weather. And as far as what the seasonal outlook, that's the wrong one. That was for fall. Sorry about that. If we look at Weather Bell, what they're predicting for the winter, you can see colder than normal across much of the upper plains into the Midwest, Great Lakes, and into the eastern lakes. And warmer than normal being confined to the southwest and to the deep south states. As far as precipitation in the form of snow, looks like much of the central and northern plains into the northern Ohio Valley, Great Lakes, and off into New England looks like a snowier than normal, predicting 133% of normal. And if we talked about, as we talked about some of those analog years, you can see as far as the temperatures wise, if we took all these years that we've had in the analog years, you can see we average about 1.7 degrees colder than normal, and you can see the sub-zero days, some of the coldest months we've ever had or years we've had are in these analog years, as much as 20 days below zero found in 2013-2014 winter. And again, so it looks like overall certainly a colder than normal winter coming up. And as far as that snowfall package, what we might expect, our normal is 40 inches. We're predicting here 52.6 right now. That's my forecast. And you can see in that analog years, the number 1, the number 2, number 3, and number 5 snowiest years we've ever recorded are in these analog years. And you can see this is also from NOAA predicting that above normal precipitation as well. And again, this 52.6 inches actually comes out to 133 degrees or 133% of the normal snowfall, very similar to what Weather Bell has and also what NOAA is predicting for us. Thanks for stopping by and have yourself a great day, and 73s to all.